And so then, Jocelyn, if you can start with the Spanish, and Nora, if you could start with the Chinese, choose the language. And now I'm going to start letting folks in. And then I'm going to go live on Facebook. Here we go, y'all. Welcome, welcome everybody. I'm so excited for everybody to join today. We have a pretty good crowd going on. So welcome, and thank you to those who are joining on Facebook. Please choose your language interpretation at the bottom for English, Spanish, or Chinese. Specifically Cantonese. And welcome, this is Oakland Rising's, are we on the 6th or 7th town hall regarding redistricting? My name is Liz Huck, I'm the executive director for Oakland Rising, and we're excited to get talking about redistricting. Let me, hold on just one quick second. I got something going on in the chat. Give me 1 second. And so I want to give us a little bit of a recap on where we've landed on redistricting thus far. So way back. Let's before we get there, actually, let me talk about yes, and Margie, I think that's how you pronounce your name. I am going to be going, Margie, I'm going to be going over all of the maps. But before we get started there, I am going to, for those who might be joining on Facebook Live or even on Zoom that aren't able to see the screen, and those who are joining by phone, I am an East Asian woman with black hair, freckles, and I'm wearing blue cat eye glasses. My hair is like asymmetrical. I'm wearing a white and black keffiyeh scarf, a Palestinian scarf. In my background is a lot of art and a table behind me. And then our interpreter, Susie, our ASL interpreter, is she has, looks like reddish hair, ginger, and she has glasses, as well as she's wearing a black top, and her background is green. And then I will, when our other interpreter joins us, ASL interpreter on the screen, when they switch out, I will also give that description. So if you're just joining now, please be sure to choose your language on the interpretation button at the bottom. On Facebook Live, we're only streaming in English, but after this, we will be posting the English and Chinese interpretation videos, and you will be able to get that on our website through our blog and our YouTube channel. So shout out to Jocelyn, our comms coordinator, who does all of that beautiful work for us. So I'm going to just give us a brief overview, and I'm going to actually share my screen by going to the Redistricting Commission website. So give me a second while I pull that up so folks can know. And can y'all see that? Someone let me know if I have the right screen up. This is the redistricting website, commission website. And I'm going to go here to draft proposals so that folks can see. As you can see, this starting back on October 13th, the Public Commission began their work in end of 2019, and where they started with 4 commissioners who then helped to choose the remaining 11 and 13 permanent and 2 alternates. And because, you know, a lot of the fear mongering and racist rhetoric from the Trump administration at the time, a lot of the census collection and data was really messed up because the collection was difficult in communities. For example, as we know, the collection in Chinatown, for example, in Oakland in 2010, actually was around 75 to 76% collection rate. And this time around, it had dropped to 56%. So the data was skewed. And also, we received the data from the federal government really late. We received it in September. So once we began that process, the Redistricting Commission began to make map proposals. And it began with in 2013. And you can see on here, if you want to, you can see previous commission meetings. They're quite long. So if you have a lot of time, I suggest you go back and take a look at what happened. If you don't want to do all of that, you can just sort of follow through the Redistricting Commission and read through what has been said. And as we look at this, it sort of began with two very specific maps that began with map A and B, really, A, B, C, D. And I'm going to just show this to you because this is where it all began. And I hope I'm projecting the right things. Someone let me know. Draft A, you see this map? Yes, thank you. So this is the original set of maps that the conversation began with. This is the traditional map that pretty much mirrors what we have currently in our district. But then there was some changes. This map then was map B and D. I'm sorry, I wanted to show you map D, which was a very different map that then sparked a lot of this very radical idea of putting much of our Hills districts into one, Hills residents into one big district. And so throughout the conversation over the few months, we've heard of the Hills only district map. And this 2 different maps really led to really deep conversation and divide in terms of which map was more appropriate. And over the time, we began to see more and more input from the community because we saw the Redistricting Commission had an outreach consultant who was amazing. Outreach by design. They began to really partner with different organizations, including Oakland Rising, others like with UPM, and also I believe with Allen Temple and other organizations that in the community to do the outreach. And the city really administration didn't really do a thorough job on their own to do the outreach. This was really the first time we saw a public commission come to fruition. And over the months, we began to see that different maps, as you can see, you can scroll through all of them and take a look at all of them. And at the very end, towards the very end, they landed on two maps, an F3 map and a K3 map. And then on December 30th, we found that the commission was unable to vote on either map fully. It was really split down the middle. They need 9 votes to pass any map to approve it and finalize it. And so the commission then had another meeting on January 5th. And because they were unable to meet the charter deadline, the city charter deadline of December 31st, the city attorney then petitioned the state. And with that petition, we saw that the city attorney then to the state instructed the state or petitioned the state to extend the deadline to April 17th. So that if the commission does not meet the deadline of April 17th, then the state could step in and create district lines for the city of Oakland. The rationale that the city attorney put into their petition was that because Oakland does not participate in the primary election or does not have a primary election that impacts our city council and OUSD and mayoral seats, that was giving enough room for the public commission to come up with the maps. However, we see this problematic because Oakland does participate in primary elections as part of Alameda County and with the state. And district lines also help to dictate some precinct lines. And so we want to ensure that we're pushing the commission to actually have maps as soon as possible so that that process is not hindered for our June primary election. So I'm going to stop there to see if folks who are here have any questions about what I shared. And then I'm going to transition to actually sharing some of the maps that the commissioners have proposed for review and for some last minute changes. And I realized I didn't finish speaking about the January 5th, about the updates. So on January 5th, when they met, again, the commission heard from a very long list of public comments, which was really amazing to see the turnout from the community. They moved forward with trying to live map some of the 2 maps, the F3 and the K3 map that nobody could, that they couldn't agree on. And at that meeting, the commissioners pushed forward to just proceed with 1 map towards the very end of the meeting. And I encourage you to take a look at that map, that meeting, if you wanted to watch the video, because during that meeting, I think folks were feeling like there was a group of commissioners who felt like moving away from the Hills only district map, that they were sort of silenced and weren't able to really review the data. But they were voted 7-6 to move forward with that. How do the map letters relate to the assembly district designation? It doesn't. There are no, the letters don't match anything. They're just random ABCD letters that in procession towards for when the maps came out. And then at that meeting, the F3 map was pushed forward. So we're gonna go ahead and take a look at that F3 map so that you all could see. Give me just 1 second while I open it up. I didn't have it all set because I didn't want to freeze my computer. Because lots of maps, lots of tabs open tend to do that. Okay, so this is the F3 map that they are, the commissioners were asked to push forward. If you look at this map, for those who cannot see the map, it has several different colors and different black lines overlaid of the city of Oakland. And it has little blue houses, I think, that are supposed to represent schools so that folks can see where the schools in those districts lie. The colors represent the current district lines, and the black lines represent the proposed map lines. So as you can see, this is actually a much more a map that is aligned with the current mapping. It's similar with a few changes here and there. One of the things that we have to be sure that when mapping, that's really difficult is that they need to ensure that every district has population parity. So with a deviation about between 5 to 10%, anything over 10% would be against federal and state guidelines. So this then led to the commissioners moving to propose maps. So I'm going to just show some of these maps. So you can also go and open these maps along with me. I want to ensure, can you all see this map that's opening up?
Yeah.
With the graph on the side. Okay, so thank you. So this is Commissioner Gangas's, she's the current chair. And as we look at this map, again, it's still very similar to the traditional map. But as we look at this, and just to let you know, this is the Districtor online tool, mapping tool. If we look at, you can play around with this too. You can look at the district, the different layers, and you can play around with this by let's see what the population looks like. And so if I were to change, where's the Black population? Then this changes the coloring, and these boxes in between are different precincts and census tracts, I mean. So if what I want to look at actually is the valuation tool, because the commissioners are looking at this tool. The caveat moving forward with the F3 map was to try to ensure that citizen voter age population for Black, Asian, and Latina communities were that they were trying to bring as much CVAP numbers to try to enlarge the CVAP numbers for these three populations across the city, so that the commissioners believe that with these CVAP numbers, they would be able to bring more electoral equity to the communities. what's tricky about this is that when we look at just CVAP numbers, it's just talking about population. It's not actually talking about who actually votes. So this still is sort of a, like, I don't want to say pie in the sky, that's not the right word, but the aspirational numbers of participants in voters, participants per racial category. So most of the commissioners' proposed maps aren't very different from each other in terms of how they actually look. And so I'm actually going to show you some of those differences by opening them all up. And I'm going to do that. But I just hope it doesn't freeze on me. Please don't freeze on me. Okay. So I'm going to open that one up. That one was from Commissioner Miller. This one is from Commissioner Good. You can also open all of these on your own by going to the Commission website. And that's Commissioner Good's. This is Commissioner Crowell's. Oops, sorry. It's Commissioner Crowell's. And this is Commissioner G's. Oops. This one is a little difficult to see because she just took a screenshot of hers. And the last one is, oops, is Hamidi, Commissioner Hamidi's. The other person, alternate Commissioner Chesmore, also submitted some suggestions, but he didn't submit a map, so I'm not going to show you those. So this is the F3 map that they're starting from. As you take a look at it, you can see that it's not very different from Gongus's map. There aren't very large differences between these maps. The main one that I would have to say that looks very different is Commissioner Hamidi's. I'm just going to briefly show you the maps. I encourage everybody to go to the Commission website, and if you want to take a deeper dive into each of these maps, I think it's kind of fun if you're really into the data and into mapping. And then this is Commissioner Hamidi's map, last one. As you can see, his is very different in terms of really for D2 and D4, trying to incorporate much of Trestle Glen as well as Glenview, Diamond, and Laurel into the Hills district here, which is very different from everybody else's. But what I wanted to show you, I want to make sure that everybody can see this. I'm going to enlarge it a little bit. Can everybody see this spreadsheet? Yes? Thumbs up from somebody? Thank you, Stephanie. So as we look at this, what I did was I went through every map that was proposed, and I went to the evaluation piece and I looked at the CVAP data and I transferred it onto this very colorful, colorful spreadsheet. And my color coding is when looking at like the highest numbers per racial category. And right here we have the commissioners. It's not very pretty. I didn't get a chance to really format this well, y'all. because the data came out just very recently. And then this is the CVAP groupings, and these are the different districts as they are proposed on the maps currently. And they used A, B, C, D, E, F, G rather than districts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so that they're not stuck in this like where this is what district 1 should look like, and that at any time they might actually flip all the numbers. They could potentially do that if they wanted to. And so it's sometimes a little confusing, but in general, A1 is District 1 and G7 is District 7 if you need that orientation. So on my color coding here for folks is the gold color is the highest number. The aqua green is the second highest number, and the pink is the third highest number of CVAP population. So when just looking at each of the different commissioners, we can see that pretty much everybody at some point really is making the effort to ensure that Black, Asian, and Latinx community CVAP numbers are maintained or optimized, I should probably say. If I were to just break down according to this, those CVAP numbers, Commissioner Gongas, Commissioner Miller, and Commissioner Crowell actually have the highest number in terms of rankings of ensuring that those CVAP numbers are in those groupings are optimized. However, pretty much everybody except Hamidi, I think Hamidi's has the least of that across the board. The numbers between each of these maps aren't very different. There isn't a huge significance between each of them. So if I were to look at the Black, the Black population across the board, this is that top line, you can see like there's not a huge difference between 16 and 15%, but it is thousands of votes. But there's not a big difference between 17.2 and 17.5, which could translate into hundreds of voters, but in general, it's not huge significant differences. And so then if I were to look at the other points that Oakland Rising was pushing for, one was to have the Coliseum stay in District 7, to push to have it in District 7, hearing back from, originally we had asked to have, originally when we first started the conversations in October and November, Oakland Rising's position was just in terms of being able to select a community of interest, that we needed the surrounding neighborhoods from Seminary to 85th, from the Water to International Boulevard, that neighborhood needed to be one community of interest or one COI. But in all the maps, as they got closer to December, none of them kept that COI together. And so it began a debate between whether it should be in District 6 or be in District 7. And that conversation was important because at first Oakland Rising took a position because as we looked at the different corporate polluters, near San Leandro Boulevard and in the flatlands off the 880, we thought it would be a good idea in terms of looking at environmental justice to have two different city council members having input and pushing against potentially pushing against corporate polluters, so that even if you had two different commissioners who had two different viewpoints, that at least that viewpoint would be heard. But then we heard from folks from our community partners, our community allies at Communities for a Better Environment and other residents in District 7 that were really asking and pushing for the Coliseum to stay, because some of the organizing that they had done around the Coliseum and the years and decades of that work, they wanted that to be honored. There are some folks, from District 7 that we heard, from District 6, who were saying that actually we need the Coliseum in District 6 because there is no major economic development project within District 6. So there's still a big toss-up in the air, but honoring the work that our partners have done in around the Coliseum, our community allies, we wanted to honor that work and wanted to see the Coliseum stay in District 7. So if I were to look at each of those maps, Gongus, Miller, Good, Crowell, and G all put the Coliseum into District 7. The other point that we wanted to make was that at the lake, there's portions of District 2 that are very much in the flatlands in East Oakland. There are parts that start to go into the foothills of Oakland. Around the lake, we felt that that district actually needed to be, and I'm going to try to pull up some other data for you all to look at. Needed to stay in District 6. All my tabs. I have so many tabs open. So give me just 1 second while I look for that. Okay, so I'm going to pull up this map so that folks can take a look. The interpreters are pinned. They should all be pinned already. Yeah, they should be pinned. Okay, so I wanted to just show this map here. Give me 1 second. You can go to the anti-eviction map in Oakland. And it's a little hard to see for the most part, but as you can see on this map, this is where the homeless encampments are in Oakland. For those who cannot see, what I've pulled up is a website, anti-evictionmap.com/Oakland-homeless-encampment-1. And on this map is a map of Oakland, and there's a bunch of red dots. And these red dots represent the homeless encampments. We have gone from, over the past 2 years, have gone from having 5 to 6,000 homeless to 6,000 to 8,000 homeless in our streets. And prior to that 2 years, we were at only 2,000. So the eviction and displacement in Oakland, and what we know from the data is that 60% of those who are living on our streets, our residents and neighbors, that they were actually Oakland residents. 60% of all unhoused people in Alameda County live prior to becoming homeless and unhoused, were residents of Oakland and of Alameda County. So I just want to be really clear about that. But as you can see here, there's a huge number of unhoused population in District 3 and in District 2. It's really compacted right around the lake. So as we look at the when we look at this F3 map, let me go to this F3 map. So we want to ensure that this map, whichever one goes forward, really looking at trying to reduce the number of how large the Lake District is. There's so many folks that use the lake, and having two district representatives, we think it will be beneficial for folks because you can, again, petition to two different city council members to think about the services. And given the disparity between who has and who has not, and the income disparity in these two districts, just to remind you, in District 3, we have a high density, high condo, high cost, what is it called? High density, high income condos in downtown and uptown areas. And we also have that here in Brooklyn Basin and around the edges of the lake. And so the disparity between who has and who has not, the income disparity is very large. So when we think about what the work of a city council member is, a large portion of that is what we think of is thinking about policy and budgetary needs. So they're thinking about the city as a whole and representing their district when looking at policies that impact the city as a whole. When we look at what the city council members do and what Oakland Unified School District board directors do on a day-to-day basis, they actually are addressing service needs. So when we look at somewhere like the lake, and we think about the unhoused and homeless populations in D3 and D2, it behooves the city council members to have not one city council member addressing all of the needs. I heard somebody on the comments say it makes sense to give as many unhoused population unhoused population to one district city council member. And that really blew my mind, because then you're asking one city council member to handle the service needs of all of those people. And it's a heavy lift. And another thing I wanted to dispel is that folks think that, well, if the income of the neighborhood actually matches the funding that goes across the city, and this isn't true. That's according to the budget that then is allocated across the city, and in general, it is evenly distributed. The city council members then advocate for more funding for specific projects and specific needs in their community accordingly, and advocate for that in the budget process. But in general, when it comes to services, it should be allocated across the city. The question is that equitable? because some communities are more highly impacted than others. For example, in the flatlands, we're highly impacted by environmental racism. We're impacted by everyday pollution. My kids have been home last week because we had a COVID exposure at school last week. And so they were home. We were waiting on PCR test results, and we stayed home. We didn't really go anywhere until we got those results out. And then one day we decided we were going to go out for a hike, because we could be by ourselves pretty much outside and be masked up and safe. So we went outside, and my daughter was like, "Oh my God, what's that smell?" And I was like, "Baby, that's the ABNI foundry." She was like, "How far away is that?" I was like, "Oh, it's only a few miles." And that she was like, "That smell is awful." And I was like, "Yeah, it's toxins that we're basically breathing and we can't do anything about." So we're highly impacted by environmental injustice. We are also highly impacted by the 880 and all the trucks that are there. We're highly impacted by transit that goes through the flatlands. We're highly impacted by that. These are the areas in which much of the unhoused population is pushed because of the encampment policies. Jenny Gerard in the chat is saying, in theory, making the Lake District into districts is understandable, but D3 has challenges of West Oakland and the port to address, plus more parks than other council districts, as the lake is an afterthought for D3. I urge you to advocate for Lake District in D2, which has the bandwidth to address lake-related issues. I hear you on that, Jenny, and I think that that could be said for the same for District 2, that actually it's really highly impacted, and they do address much of the needs at the lake. When thinking about what actual services are there, that actually the two council members currently work really well on addressing the issues at the lake on both sides of the lake. And so really thinking that this is a good avenue to go forward with. So I hear what you're saying, Jenny or Jeannie, that we're still going to advocate, because as we heard from our folks from APEN and from Courage and other organizations that do work in the San Antonio and in Chinatown, that the differences between Adams Point as well, and as we look at Adams Point and the difference between that and what happens in Eastlake and in Chinatown is really, there's a huge difference between those places. And so the needs around the lake are actually quite much larger than just the unhoused population. I was just giving that as one example. I hear what you're saying there, Jenny, and really appreciate that point of view. If there are any other questions, please be sure to put in the chat so that we can see those, and I'll be happy to answer them and address them. So if I look at that data, I'm just going to go back to the data point again. Here's my very colorful chart. If I break down the two different proposed maps right now, Commissioner Gongas and Commissioner G are the only two that kind of bring back the lines of Lake Merritt back to our current district lines. We think that this is the best avenue to go forward. So if we were to look at these two maps, if we're asking folks to support any of the two maps, as we look at the two, that Gongus and G's map really address those two issues. But as I was looking at Commissioner Crowell's, so let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, I believe this is Commissioner Crowell's. Let me just double check. I want to make sure I have the right one because there's so much data. Yeah, this is Commissioner Crowell's map. And I wanted to honor the work that went into this by Commissioner Crowell. There were some major changes from the original F3 map here, including bringing this the Coliseum into District 7, and the differences between the two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this here and try to split screen this. Can you all see the split screen? Am I tripping?
No, we can't see it.
Okay, then I'm
Not yet.
gonna switch my screen share then so that you all can see this. I want to ensure that you see the split screen. Okay. There we go. Can you see it now? Hey, look at technology. I can do it. I can do it. Okay, so if I look at these two, sorry y'all, I sing a lot. So I like to pretend I'm in a musical, so I can have some joy in my life. Not that I don't have joy, but anyways, so
That's good.
thank you. I appreciate the encouragement to live my life like a musical. So if I look at these two maps, as you can see, there are some slight changes between that. And the big one here in Commissioner Crowell's map, I feel is an encouraging one because it actually tries to incorporate a little bit more of the K3 map, which was trying to bring a concentration of the hills into one district. The reason why we think as Oakland Rising, while we were trying to really push for this, is because so much of campaign individual contributions in Oakland happen here in the hills. So let me actually get that up for you all so you can take a look at that with me. Give me 1 second again while I pull up that data. Looking for this. Okay, so I can't seem to find the right map. I have so many different maps open, y'all. Okay, I'm not going to be able to look at this live with you and find it live for you all, so I'm going to go ahead and stop messing around and show you this. So I'm just going to go back to showing you map 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, this is the map. I'm going to split my screen one more time so you all can see. So as you can see, there's an attempt here to try to grow the, oh, here it is. This is the one I wanted to show. This is trying to attempt to grow the district. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the maps incorrectly. So as I'm looking at the maps, this is Commissioner Gongas's map. I apologize as I'm looking again. So that this map is attempting to, Gongas's map is attempting to really grow the and increase the K3 map, you know, the Hills Only District map. And what I was trying to get at is that actually that I was trying to find the data set so that you can all see it. But that in this area up here of Oakland, this is actually where the highest concentration of individual campaign contribution donors live. This is why we were really pushing for, for this Hills Only district, because, and the concentration of the Hills into one district, because the influence that campaign contributions actually have in Oakland is quite high. And so this map is an attempt to really push towards that. So as I look also at Commissioner Crowell's map here, you can see that there is just some slight differences as we look at the map here along the lines here for District 6 and between District 6 and 7. But for the most part, it stays the same. So I apologize. I was getting confused between Commissioner Crowell's and Commissioner Gongas's map. That I really feel like this is a much better map as well, because as we look at some other data sets, when we look at voter data in Oakland, this is Black voter data. Can you see this? This is not CVAP numbers. This is actual voter registration. So one of the things that, and overlaid is the F3 map, but if with this increase here of the District 4, as you can see, can you all see the Oakland voter precinct data?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. So as we look here, this is Commissioner Gongas's map that increases a larger portion of this portion of the district into D4, into the city. That would then break down the white vote, the white population of voters here, and give a higher number of Black voters in District 1. And that, I think, is often one of those areas of the city that are often ignored as a flatland area, because so much of the city, as we think about it, is in the hills. Folks tend to think of Rockridge, tend to think of these upper portions of the hills as District 1, but it does increase the Black vote in District 1 and increases those CVAP numbers. So, you know, I think as we move forward and looking at the two different maps, as we move forward looking at the different maps, we're really thinking that pushing forward with Commissioner Gongas's map is a good choice for Oakland because of this increase in this Hills district, in District D4. That's color coded on this map. I'm just gonna go through this again. This is Commissioner Miller's. It's also very similar. There's an attempt to increase this number here.
We can't see the maps right now.
See, thank you, appreciate you. Thank you so much. So this is Commissioner Gongas's map, and this is Commissioner Miller's map. So there's also, again, another increase here to grow that map, the Hills Only district, I believe this is Commissioner Good's map that does not do that. And then Commissioner Crowell's map here. We don't think that Commissioner Hamidi's map is one that we want to go with because this here really doesn't create that the contiguous mapping structure that also is part of the redistricting guidelines. So if we were to really look between Commissioner Gongas and Commissioner Miller's maps, we can see that there is an attempt to increase this Hills Only district by including portions of Rockridge and others into the Hills district. However, the difference between Miller's map and Gongas's map is the lake, as you can see right here, right around the lake. Gongas's map does try to maintain much more of the current map lines around the lake that we think work well and function well currently for Oakland. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if there's any questions from folks, or if there are comments about any about what I presented. Feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions. Great. So I wanted to also just go back to some data that we had that I wanted to share with you all. Again, just to really be informed from some of this data. What has really been informing Oakland Rising's data? So one, I failed to be able to show you more clearly, and I'll be happy to share. We'll be sure to share the link to the breakdown of individual campaign contributions so you can all see that. But some of the data that is really important to Oakland Rising and to our collaborative partners is two things. Is one, here's some poverty rates in Oakland. The distinctness is that this is a map of Oakland. It's shaded between red to pale ivory, I guess, and then and a spectrum in between. And when we look at the data here, we see between 30 to 100% across the flatlands, we have high poverty rates. That's very similar in terms of housing cost burden that actually, it coincides with the poverty rates across the city. The other that I wanted to mention, not only in terms of POC voters, this is actually registered voter data. It's not the CVAP numbers that are very different. That's citizen voting age population. So this just includes anybody who is eligible to vote over the age of 18. That's the numbers that the commission is looking at. We were also looking at who's actually registered to vote. So when we look at POC voters across Oakland, and one of our big concerns is being able to maintain Black voters given the amount of displacement and gentrification in the city. And some other data points that we looked at also is, as we looked at, for example, we looked at the way that the city voted. And one of the reasons why we really felt like increasing the increasing the Hills only district is because the impact on some policies locally. I see your hand, Nick. I'll finish my point and then be sure to get to you. So this is Prop 21 data. And Prop 21 was a rent control data at the state level that was attempting to bring rent control data to the city. Give rent control jurisdiction to the cities. And as you can see, majority of those in the flatlands voted yes for it. This map, for those who cannot see it, again, is a very colorful map between dark blue to red. And we see that 60 to 100% of the flatland voters voted in favor of this. And whereas in the Hills, we have between 0 to 40% voting. These were some of the data points that helped us to decide and think about how, why, removing the flatlands from, separating and concentrating a Hills district into one district was important. Nick, did you want to go ahead and ask your question? You're not on mute. You're muted,
Thank you. It's more of a comment than a question, or a couple of comments. First of all, I want to thank Oakland Rising so much for having put so much effort into monitoring this process and having these forums and participating. It means so much, since there's not really any other organization that's put in so much time, although there is a reporter on Twitter named Trash Night Heron, who goes by other names as well, who's doing a lot of reporting on the redistricting, so I appreciate him as well. But so aside from the appreciation, one thing I want to say is, one of the last things you showed is very important, I feel, towards understanding redistricting, because what you showed is that you showed how people are voting.
Yeah.
And when you draw the districts, it's all about representation. It's all about voting. So if you have an issue that's important to the Flatlanders and not so important to the Hills people, then you don't want the Hills people diluting the vote of the Flatland people. And you saw that very clearly in the last diagram you showed, where the Flatland people voted a certain way and the Hills people voted a different way.
That's right.
And so it's about representation, it's about voting. People talk about the money. I think the money is less important, because don't forget that no matter where you are, you can donate money anywhere else. So if you're in the Hills, even if you're not in a Flatlands district, you could donate money to a race in that district. So I don't think the money is that important, especially since there's independent expenditure committees these days. Money can come from anywhere, but the representation, the voting, is really where things are important, and where you want to make sure that the people have the best representation. So thank you once again for all your work on this.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the point of view around the campaign contributions as well. You're right. You can contribute across the city, right? Or anywhere in terms of campaign contributions. I think that the point around it is that candidates then translates into elected positions. The thing that one of the points that I failed to share with you also is that actually, when we look at where high propensity voters reside, it is overwhelmingly in the Hills, right? That folks who live in the Flatlands are more marginalized from the voting process, right? So we have more limited English speakers living in the Flatlands, right? And so access to voting rights as an example, Oakland Rising with the Asian Law Caucus, the ACLU, and the League of Women Voters actually wrote a complaint against Alameda County voter registrar in 2020 around something that happened in District 6 at Mills College precinct at one of the voting stations, at one of the polling stations, where they failed to, there was mistakes made. They sent home, not giving them the receipt that they voted, but the actual ticket for voting, what they voted on. They gave it to the person, to the voter, and they went home with it. And we've documented about, I can't remember the number, I believe it was around 300 people. And there was a process then to have to track them down and how did they actually vote? Like that was a whole hiccup, right? Like a whole mess up. Not only that, but we also found that Alameda County Registrar failed to offer language services that were appropriate, right? And so when you walk into a polling station, you're supposed to be able to have all of the languages displayed so that you can choose your language. And a lot of voters don't know this, but that display wasn't up. There were like, you had to ask for the language, and then there was binders of this information, and it was just cumbersome. So when we look at, like, as an example, as one example, there's many, but one example in terms of looking at why flatland voters have much more difficulty and access to voting and to the electoral process, that does not happen in the flatlands, right? And so when a candidate is running, when an elected is thinking about policies, they're thinking about the person or the voter that has the loudest voice, who shows up, right? Who is able to speak English, because we, for example, as Oakland Rising, when we were even during the budget process, we had to demand for language access through the budget process, because some of our members for Mujeres Unidas Activas are Spanish only, right? They only speak Spanish, monolingual Spanish speakers. So when we think about that access, they're marginalized from the process, right? And so when we think about the way candidates do their campaigning, the way that electeds then make choices, it is inevitably against and biased and inequitable to those who live in the flatlands, because they cater to the vote in the hills. They cater to those who have money. They cater to the English speakers. They cater to those who have access and are centered in the process of the electoral process. So that was also one of the major points. And so for us, really increasing that district in the hills to be able to concentrate that vote there into one district rather than them having influence over the city. We also, I've heard from other folks that, there are large numbers of people who, homeowners in District 6 and 7, who don't, and people who don't want to see this Hills only district. And for us, I can hear what they have to say, because they are longtime Oakland residents, but they are homeowners nonetheless. Whereas, we are representing those voters who are generally flatland renters, right? And as we look at how displacement is happening for those who are renters because of the way displacement and gentrification is happening in Oakland. So those are some points that I just wanted to make for that reasoning. So I think that for us, looking at the data, we sent out a e-blast today And it was funny because I was actually in a meeting and somebody got the email right while we were in the meeting. So like, hey, I just got an email from you. So as we look at that, you know, not having been able to really review a lot of the maps, but stepping into this as we move towards the maps, really leaning towards Commissioner Gongus's map. Although the CVAP data across all of the proposed map, except for Hamidi's map, really does try to increase API, Latinx, and Black CVAP numbers. But when we look at those needs for moving the Coliseum into District 7, needs around the lake, and that increase of the Hills district, we feel that Commissioner Gongus's or Commissioner Miller's map does that. Nick, you had another question or comment?
Yeah, I just wondered if you did any work to look at comparing CVAP data between the current districts and any of the new proposed maps, and how and what the changes were in percentages in CVAP.
Yeah, you know, it's hard to make that distinction because actually I decided not to really focus on comparing what we have now to what we're trying to work towards, because one, the census data is so skewed, right? Because then we're comparing 2010 data to 2020 data, which is really skewed in terms of population. The other thing in terms of consideration that is difficult is because we actually have such a huge disparity in terms of Black voters and Black residents in Oakland, right? So that change is so dramatic. And we have seen a large increase of Latinx community in Oakland. And so just across the board, we felt that looking at the data was just more important to just stay with the data that we have currently, because the difference between 2010 and 2020 is so dramatic. Are there any other questions? I appreciate the questions, Nick. Any other questions for any other of the folks who have joined us? Okay, so just encouraging folks to show up tomorrow to the commission meeting. And I'm going to open up, going back to the Redistricting Commission website so you can see. Back to the commission website. So just clicking here, you can see January 19th. I believe the commission has already set a meeting for January 26th. Anything, so you can go here and you can see the meeting actually starts at 4 o'clock. They were starting at 5 before, and we're going till midnight. So do like I do. I sometimes do some yoga while I'm listening after, and this is prime time for families and everybody in Oakland to be having dinner. And so just being mindful of that. And as they go late into the evening and trying to stay awake after a long day of work, I'll do some stretches and other things while I'm listening to the commission, and also following along. I also, Nick, like you, follow along Omar Yassin's thread, trash heron, high-feed trash heron. So click on this, it'll take you straight to the webinar. And unlike city council meetings where public comment is only taken at the beginning, The format for the Redistricting Commission is they do have a public open forum where you could say and provide public input and public comment to the overall agenda and the overall process, but they take public comment to the specific agenda items. So be sure to look at the Redistricting Commission agenda so that you can see when public comment is happening throughout the process. One other thing that's really key to this meeting that's going to be presented is there is an equity process that and looking at data information, equity data information by Darlene Flynn, who is the director of the Department of Race and Equity in Oakland. And so you can also take a look at much of the data that they're offering here when thinking about the equity process in Oakland, voter registration information, similar to some of the data that we've been presenting. So that will be interesting to see. And then also we're going to see the different maps, maps that are happening as proposed by some of the commissioners, and they will review some of the online survey results. So be sure to chime in tomorrow to offer that and to offer your comments to let the commissioners know. Unfortunately, today at 5 o'clock was the last time for online comments to be submitted for tomorrow's and emails to be submitted for tomorrow's meeting, but show up for public comment and make those comments. And I think we're going to go ahead and end this a little bit early so that you all can go back to enjoying your evenings, and appreciate you all for joining us in the process here.
So much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. It's been the Public Commission has been messy, but, I think that, change and transition is messy. And it's been an actual beautiful process to see all of the debate that's happening in Oakland. So appreciation to everybody who's joined the commission meetings and sent an email in and advocated for your communities. To see Oaklanders really show up for their communities and for Oakland is a beautiful sight to see. So thank you all for joining. Jocelyn has added the link in the chat, so if you need to go ahead and go to that link. We really appreciate you. We will, thank you, Jocelyn. Again, don't forget the meeting starts at 4. We will post this video and the language in Spanish and Chinese on our YouTube and you'll find links to it on our website. Please join oaklandrising.org to sign up for our e-blasts and newsletters. We will have a very busy 2020, y'all. There's the primary election in Alameda County where the DA's race as well as the sheriff's race is going to be determined, and city council and OUSD and the mayoral race for Oakland in November. We're going to be busy. So stay tuned for all of that work and follow us on our social media. And if you really appreciate the work that we're doing, donations are always welcome. So you can also go to oaklandrising.org/donate and make a donation and contribution and join our Sustainer Fund by giving monthly. We really appreciate that. And appreciate you. Thank you so much. Have a good evening. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Good night.